Hello and welcome. You're watching the Wire app. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. Over 50,000 people have been evicted from their homes in Assam as Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma continues with his exercise of removing illegal immigrants from Assam. Now, this is continuing even as the special intensive revision of the electoral rolls in Bihar takes place. And now, Sarma has said that those who have been evicted will also be struck off the electoral rolls. Meanwhile, the Delhi High Court has set aside the CIC order demanding that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's degree be made public, and it has said that this is personal information. So what does all this mean going forward, and what are the implications of this? To discuss this, I am being joined by Sangeeta Barooah Pisharoty. She's National Affairs Editor at The Wire, and Shahrukh, she is a lawyer in Delhi practicing in the Supreme Court and other courts as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
First off, Sangeeta, let's start with the fact that these evictions in Assam are happening just about a year before the elections. And we know that in the last few weeks itself, over 2,000 families have been evicted in these illegal drives. And the Chief Minister is not showing any signs of backing down. In fact, he's doubling down on this whole exercise. And we've seen people are living in tents. They have been removed from their homes. Some have been taken to no man's land. If you could briefly tell our viewers what is the background of this massive displacement exercise that is taking place in Assam.
See, good you mentioned that about the elections. So every election, I come from Assam, every election since my childhood, I have been seeing that people talk about development and all of these things, for the say 3-4 years of their rule. And then when it comes closer to the election, the whole bogey goes to the question of illegal immigrants or Bangladeshis. Okay, so many have come, they are taking away our jobs, and all of these things come into play. So Assam is also a state where we had this, anti-foreigner movement. There was an anti-migration riot when we saw it in Delhi that happened in 1983. So these things are Assam's history. So batches of politicians from every color have been playing this game to consolidate their political constituencies and also the parties, whether it's Congress or BJP or AGP, they're always been banking on this factor because this factor is the rawest sentiment of the Assam's majority community, the Assamese. So this is the background, the basic background. But if you ask me, why is he doing it? What is the recent the push and pull factors for Himanta doing this is, I would say, two things. One is, of course, the elections coming. So this is the only way he can actually, try to pull some votes towards his party and to him as the leader, if at all he comes back to the hot seat as the chief minister, because it's not for sure. Because in the last election, we saw Sarbanand Sonowal was the chief minister. Everybody thought he's going to be the chief minister. And then he was removed and Himanta was brought back. And now yesterday, Amit Shah was there in Guwahati. We saw there's a photograph that's been circulating. Here, Sonowal is sitting next to him. And so these are things people are trying to interpret. So election is one issue that he is thinking that this is the rawest sentiment he needs to now, scratch at to get as many votes as possible. Because see, in the 2024 parliamentary elections, when we saw the Congress in all the 14 seats, it has got over 2 lakh votes. So that means the Congress vote is there. Okay, and a lot of these communities, the voters have got divided. City Garden community vote is divided, which then BJP has been banking on. So it's a problem. But the second thing, which actually is also a factor here, is that there is a lot of pressure from the center to give Assam's land to the big industrial houses, be it Ambani, Adani, or say Ramdev. A lot of land has been given also, but there is a demand that if you need to set up. They all want to enter Northeast, and particularly Assam is the most infrastructure wise is the easiest. Though Arunachal is the largest tract of land, but it's not very easy because it is within the scheduled, the 6th schedule rule of the constitution. But Assam, a large swath of it is not. Okay, even then the Dima Hazao case, we saw that so much of land was given to one cement company, and Delhi Guwahati High Court had objected to it. So there is a need for Himanta to set aside large tracts of land to be given to these industrial houses. And then when you see the news reports, they are clearing people from where? From the government's forest land. Huge tracts of forest are gone. Will they now put back the forest again? There is one little hangama I saw that they would be doing some plantation drive and all that. That didn't happen. But this is what the whole thing, and the lowest denominator are the Muslims of East Bengal origin, who can be easily called Bangladeshis without any proof needed or anything like that. These are also communities who live along the riverside, on the river banks. When the flood happens, annual flood happens, most of them lose their land and they move to another one. So where did you come from? Oh, you come from the other side of the boundary. So this is a very important thing that you get to see. So these are the, in the packing order, they're at the end of it. So this is how the politics is being played, and the centre's pressure is a very important factor in this eviction drive carried out by Himanta.
So we'll come back to the political aspect of it in just a bit, but I want to ask you that, as Sangeeta was just mentioning, that a lot of these people are of East Bengal origin and they live in those areas which get flooded every year, so documents may not be easily available to them. But out of media reports that we have seen in the past few weeks and even months, a lot of these people have shown that they do have proof of their existence in India, of being Indian citizens. They've shown land records, they've shown their voter ID cards, Aadhaar cards, and several other documentation proof. And in fact, in one report by the Scroll, one person said that his family has been living here for over a century. So that's even before independence. And we've also seen that public notices are being issued for these eviction drives as opposed to individual notices for before homes can be demolished. So what is the legality behind these actions, in your opinion?
First of all, before we start to comment on the legality of any such thing, or before we start to criticize these policies, we're all very conscious that we live from FIR to FIR. Any kind of criticism, any kind of question about legality is shown as either an attack on harmony itself or on national security. So we have to acknowledge that there is no space for criticism, there's no space for questioning. But before again I answer your specific questions, I want to step back and I want to draw parallels with what is happening across the world now. Just a week ago, Reform UK is now a far-right party.
Right.
And they've announced a campaign called Operation Restoring Justice, if you please. And they've promised that they'll send away hundreds and thousands of undocumented migrants. On the ground, what it means is that they'll be rounding up black people and brown people and putting them in detention centers, which is very much what we are doing in Assam, amongst other places. Now, what is interesting is that I was reading up and I was listening to some interviews, and somebody who's a part of this Reform UK, they're two leaders, Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf, but somebody else was sort of speaking to the media, and he was saying that our constituency is always angry, and they always feel that they're under siege. And it's these emotions that we are responding to, their anger and their sense of siege. And that again felt very close to home. Now, what is it that they're doing? They are saying that we will withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights. So certain human rights, fundamental human rights, will no longer be available to basically South Asian communities, poor, vulnerable immigrant communities, whether documented or undocumented. And these human rights include the right to life, right to dignity, right to access to family and private affairs, right to vote or participate in free elections, and right to a fair trial. Now, again, all of this sounds very familiar.
Absolutely.
Take the case of the Florida driver, the trucker, Now, at best, I think he should be prosecuted for negligent homicide, rash driving. All of that aside, the the state is threatening to suspend valid documents of all Sikh Punjabi truckers who constitute up to 20% of the economy, of the carrier economy in the US. So really this goes beyond the law, right? And there's already a resistance, there's already a movement, at least in the UK and in the US, in Canada, that's saying that this is completely unlawful and this is completely disproportionate. But one of the interesting things that I was reading was a report from Canada which documents that every time there's rhetoric, especially if it comes from the leadership, the political leadership, and government officials, that targets migrant communities, that really influences public perception about these targeted groups. And it also records that every time they ratchet up this kind of abusive language or targeted language, there is a proportionate increase in everyday hate crime and everyday use of abusive language. Now, all of this we are seeing here. Apart from everything else, one of the questions that I'm asking myself is, it will become a problem globally. And at least in the West, we will be at the receiving end. And we will have to find a policy response to this. And how will that policy response, when we make it to the US or to the UK or to any other Western country, match up to our domestic policies with respect to the poorest, vulnerable communities, whether documented or undocumented, right? But this is a very long answer to what you'd asked me. But let me respond to your question. I think to evict people from a land that you're claiming is actually government land is akin to slum demolitions in Delhi. I mean, there have been a series of them. But the first thing that you do is you come out with a policy of rehabilitation and compensation, right? So even if you're claiming that this is government land and these people are encroachers, and that has nothing to do with their citizenship status. In Delhi, Madrasi colony, for instance, was demolished in the center of Mathura Road. There was no question about their citizenship. It's about use of land. But the first thing that the court asked the government to do was to rehabilitate them, give them proper housing. So even if that's what the government is trying to do, it has to first come out with a rehabilitation policy. And the government, I think, is actually doing that
Yeah,
piecemeal,
that is where
ad
I
hoc.
just want to highlight
So
this.
they're not even claiming legally that these people are not citizens. Because they are being compensated. Some people are being told to go and live somewhere else. So what is this connection with striking them off the voters list? Because the government is not even claiming that they are not citizens.
Exactly. See, this is what when this, even when these 4,000 houses were demolished in Uriamghat in Golaghat district before it became an issue with Nagaland, the border issue, because Naga and Assam border issue is in the Supreme Court. So they had to stall that. But this 4,000 houses that they had demolished, they are, Assam government is giving compensation between 1 and 5 lakh depending on the kind of houses that they have. So this we are not talking about. So why are they giving it to, if they are all Bangladeshis, why are you giving it to land money to the Bangladeshis? Because they don't want a legal issue there. You see, the earlier when during Himanto's time there was another very big eviction that was carried out in Gorukhuti, where we it became infamous for that photograph where this one government appointed photographer was jumping over a man who was shot dead,
Yes.
nearly dying. So that's Gorukhuti I'm talking about. All those people who were evicted were also given, were settled elsewhere. Why were they settled elsewhere? Because they were Indian citizens. So, but the political mileage that he wants to take out of it is only by labeling them as Bangladeshis. So we need to understand the political side of it, the legal side of it, and the pressure that he is facing from the center to give as much land as possible to make these, Assam as the gateway to the business hub carved at the Northeast they want to see as. So these are the three lethal, there's a combination that has happened, and the result is what we are seeing, that ugliness that has unfolded.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and the other thing is, because election is coming, he has to use this Bangladeshi thing. And already I see, like in on Facebook and other social media spaces that I also am part of, being Assamese, we're seeing people are asking that, how is it that so many Bangladeshis suddenly came? Where are they? See, when Supreme Court had long ago said that if whoever has been proven to be Bangladeshi, you talk to the Bangladesh government and send them back. How many did the Modi government in the last 10, 11 years have sent back to Bangladesh? They were having a very good honeymoon period with Sheikh Hasina. They never did that. And now that Sheikh Hasina had to flee to India, and you have a government which is not very pro-India, it also suits people like Himanta, politicians like Himanta, to also kick up this Bangladeshi bogey. So this is where, and in the process, who is getting affected? These like people who don't have much voice in it. They are also in the packing order anywhere the lowest, in the pyramid that you look at this whole Assamese construction of people in Assam. They're the lowest. So nobody is going to talk to them. They don't have any great media access or anything like that. So this is the problem. And particularly in Uriamghat, when we saw this whole issue came up also because the other side that was affected are the non-Muslims. So they are like, say, Naga origin, the villagers, they got very angry. So their leader have to come and protect them. And they said, stop it. So they were, what plantation drive that I mentioned, the Assam's agriculture minister, forest minister, Chandramohan Patwari had reached there at Uriamghat to do a plantation drive on these 4,000 houses that were demolished. The Naga government refused. Why did they refuse? Because the local population, the Naga villages said this is a disputed land. It is also perhaps our land. So how is Assam government unilaterally doing that? So they had to stop all this. So we have to understand, when we see things from a distance from, say, New Delhi, we have to understand these nuances. Why is he's desperate. Himanta Biswa Sarma, ahead of 2026 elections, actually comes across to me as a desperate person trying to win the elections somehow. Because see, it is very unfortunate. Himanta was looked by the Assamese community as a very strong leader, as someone who can assert to New Delhi. His whole reputation, his everything, when he stood against Rahul Gandhi, left the party, people thought that, he can actually voice our concerns to New Delhi. And he was being given this whole aura of mama, means like, a maternal uncle who will listen to every, thing that we demand, and he will give it to us. That was the reputation he had. And then people thought that certain good times will come to Assam because of we have a strong leader as a chief minister. But I'm actually very sad to see his situation today, that he has nothing to take to the public after 5 years, that see, I have done these things, based on this you give me, you re-elect me. Only thing he actually has to do is like fall back on the easy solution, which has helped a lot of politicians in Assam to catapult themselves to winning elections. It is an unfortunate thing for actually Himanta Biswa Sarma as a politician.
So, since we are speaking about these so-called illegal immigrants, and the fact that he's now suggesting that these people will be struck off electoral rolls, before I come to the question of whether this can even be done in the first place, the other part of it is that in 2019, I want to tell our viewers, the Indian government, central government, told Parliament that they had only found 3 people who were allegedly foreigners on electoral rolls. Now, this is very strange, because the whole whole idea behind the SIR in Bihar, which is starting in Bihar and will be taken up on a nationwide scale, is that there's a lot of illegal immigrants that have crept into our voter rolls, apparently. So this is starting in Bihar. Next are border states like Assam and West Bengal that are due to go to the elections next year. But we know that this is happening, these two things are happening simultaneously, the SIR in Bihar as well as the evictions and possible disenfranchisement of people in Assam. So is this unprecedented, in your opinion, that a chief minister is announcing that he will strike off people from electoral rolls? Does he even have the
He does
power to
not
do
have-
so?
He does not have the power to do that.
Yeah, that's my question.
The
Does he have
Election
the power to do
Commission
so?
is a constitutional authority which is not under the government of India or any state government. The Election Commission is solely responsible for creation of the electoral rolls, and no political party, least of all the party in power, has the authority, legal or ethical or moral. It's supposed to stay away from there. So this kind of rhetoric is ethically wrong and obviously completely illegal, completely contrary to the constitutional design.
And just a related question to this is that before I ask Sangeeta about the doubtful voters, which is, of course, in Assam's history, but also the fact that since these demolitions, these evictions have been accompanied by demolitions, we have seen that the Supreme Court has had put a halt to these demolitions, yet they have continued. And notices are not being issued in the manner that they are supposed to. People are being evicted from their homes. Do you think that there should be a larger role in such a scenario that courts could perhaps take up?
Absolutely yes. I think courts could even take suo motu notice. This is contempt. I think Goalpara has now gone to the court.
No, Uriamghat had gone to the court, and that's how there's a stay now. So on the Assam side, the demolitions have stopped, the eviction has stopped only because of the Supreme Court stay order. And the other side, on the Nagaland side, as I said, is because the Naga people are opposed to it and the political leadership doesn't want it.
So the fact that this has continued till it went to court, and yet there has not been, at least to my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there has not been a negative, a condemnation of sorts from courts.
But that's across the board. I mean, that orders are now carried on in breach, really, across states, and courts have not responded in the manner that we would have hoped. So that is across the board. Yes,
And, so I just want to ask you, Sangeeta, about the fact that these...
May I just add to
Yes.
something that you
Yes,
were saying?
please.
I just wanted to also reiterate the point that you're making, that he speaks in a forked tongue. I mean, to different constituencies,
Absolutely.
it's a very different narrative. For instance, you can trace those checks back because these compensation payments are made through checks. These are not cash payments. So to them, you are saying that, yes, we will rehabilitate you. You are citizen. Perhaps not equal to others, but you are citizen. And to the Nagas, he's saying, let's talk. Let's think about this. I saw a news report just yesterday which says that a lot of textile units may now shift to Bangladesh in view of the tariffs, to avoid the tariffs. If that happens, then there'll be a very different kind of dialogue and negotiation with Bangladesh. And the other narrative, which is for his constituency of people who feel under siege, he's saying that I'm actually weeding out illegal immigrants and sending them back. But again, the people who've been pushed back are actually citizens. Now their habeas corpus petitions pending.
Many of them are come back, brought back.
And some not. So again, different narratives for different constituencies. But my concern in all of this, which is legal, is that narratives aside, I mean, there'll be an ebb and flow, but once any which narrative starts to trump criminal procedure, that becomes a problem, because that leads to a certain kind of criminal justice practice developing where you can put procedure on the side. And my fear is that if you create a narrative which shows some kind of crisis, which suggests that this is a state of exception, then it's becoming more and more normal for people to just put procedure aside. And this is also your answer. Why are the courts not acting with the urgency that they should? because everyone is treating it like some state of exception. We are under siege from illegal immigrants, so procedures can be dispensed with. So nobody is showing any urgency, and that goes for SIR also.
And we saw some unprecedented scenes a couple of days back in Delhi when the People's Tribunal on Assam was presenting its report at the Constitutional Club, and we saw a full group of people, some wearing skull caps, interestingly, marching in. And this came just days after Himanta Biswa Sarma attacked Saida Hamid, who was a former member of the Planning Commission. She was part of this People's Tribunal when she was in Assam. He issued a threat of sorts to her that if she dares to come to Assam again, all because she said that not everybody who's being labeled as illegal immigrants are Bangladeshis, and even if they are Bangladeshis in India, what is the problem? So he went all out against her. But when they were presenting this report in Delhi, just to tell our viewers, a whole group of people marched in, holding placards, chanting slogans of Jai Shri Ram, and even some very derogatory slogans of Desh ke Gaddaro ko, which we have heard before from a BJP MP Anurag Thakur as well. So in the fact that the group was presenting its report in Delhi and these people marched in and created a ruckus in the heart of New Delhi, the Constitution Club, how do you see this incident? And a more related question is that why were these people wearing skull caps? What is the message behind that?
I was actually, when I saw that, I was just laughing and was thinking, our chief minister is so predictable. Because you see, the game is never everybody ever understood. People like us who've been observing Assam and Northeast and his politics, it's very easy to get what he's trying to do. You see, though I was looking at that video, there were all these people with skull caps and all entering because they thought their entry may be a little issue. So if they see, they think that they're looking at the world at black and white. People who are sitting there on the dais, people like Hashmandar, against whom he has been saying day in, day out, I don't want these people to come. He has accused Hashmandar also of inserting some illegal immigrants' name into the NRC without showing any proof. Like there's nothing that you have to show now. You can just say things. So he did that. And then what people in Assam were laughing, saying that they couldn't even say Himanta. They said Himant. So they were all saying that these were hired goons in Delhi. That means, the kind of things that people talk, and that is what is happening. But why did he ensure this happens? Because these are people like Hashmandar and all of them. When the NRC update process was happening, these people were going and standing with the Mia community, the people of East Bengal origin, the Bengali-speaking Muslim origin families, though they call themselves Assamese now. Okay, so they were standing with them. So they thought that they're in trouble. So a lot of the Assamese, the really right-wing and also very Jatiyotabad Assamese, they were also thinking that, now they are going to disrupt the process, because a lot of people in Assam also have this feeling there are a lot of Bangladeshis, okay, and there's like they crept into the electoral system. That's there. It was an open border in the 70s and all that. People's movement must have happened, okay. Otherwise, in the Indira Gandhi government also, they would not say ki Assam has a separate cut-off date for citizenship, and not for nothing. So this has happened. This is the history of the place. But you keep digging at it, keep scratching it, and keep paying politics and keeping alive, then people can't move on. So that is where the situation is. So then it's very easy to then hear that he's targeting people like Hashmandar. Then you talked about Saida Hamid. She said something which is like opposed by a lot of people, in a sense that she said these things that even if it's a Bangladeshi, what is wrong, and not all of them are Bangladeshis. Then she, which is true, not all of them are Bangladeshis, but she also says things like that Bangladeshis, if they come, they will not take away the rights of the others, which is something problematic. I think she just went beyond her remit to say these kind of things. But he was looking for these kind of opportunities. He immediately came on to the reporters and said, these are the people close to the Gandhi family. So why is Gandhi family brought in? because of the fear of the Gaurav Gogoi factor now in the coming elections. So he is throughout playing politics only. That is why then one Assam party, Assam Jatiya Parishad leader, their president Lurinjyoti Gogoi, has been asking the chief minister through local reporters, why, when you are calling them Bangladeshis, why are you settling them? Why did you make them part of your government schemes? He is actually now forced to admit, only yesterday I think he said that yes, I myself have given them benefits and all that. So why are you giving benefits to Bangladeshis? So this is it's actually a game. That is what is happening. But as I told you, Sravasti, earlier, it's an unfortunate situation for Himanta Biswa Sarma, who was looked at as a very strong politician by the people of Assam, to actually also resort to this whole Mia Bangladeshi politics, instead of talking about that, see, I have done this much for you, give votes to me or based on this. See, let's not forget, when Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister had gone to Assam in the before BJP came to power, it was in 2015, I think, if I remember correctly, in the Barooah areas. What did he say? He said from the public meeting that my party will bring only 3 things to Assam: development, development, and development. Where is development?
But he's changed it a little bit, and he talks about Jati, Mati,
That is what
Bheti.
it
Yeah.
became, Jati Mati Bheti. Based on that only they could win. So that's what I'm saying, that everywhere it is now this, whole identity crisis.
But this Jati Mati Beti has also been was also the narrative in Jharkhand against the tribals and the women
Exactly,
over there.
exactly.
It did not work over there.
It was a success. It was a success model in Assam. I know the people who actually formulated those things, because they thought that they got a raw deal during the Congress time, so they will get an NRC updated and Assam's all problems will be solved. But it was not. I know the same people who formulated those things are now very, very saddened by the thing that 10 years hence nothing has happened.
Very interestingly, yesterday I was watching the India Today Mood of the Nation poll, where Himanta Biswa Sarma is one of the most favored chief ministers.
The most
favored chief minister
He's
across the
beaten,
country.
Yogi
Adityanath. But in Assam itself, his popularity has dropped by about 10 percentage points according to that poll.
I want to add again to what you said. I mean, as in the UK, as in the US, the narrative is, what is the problem with undocumented migrants, or even documented ones? That they're eating up your resources. So again, this Reform UK has actually identified 3 areas. It says if we throw them out, you'll get more housing, which is land. You'll get better public services, identity, our culture, and 4th, fair wages. Now, Jati, Mati, Bheti, more or less conflates with that. It's about your identity, then it's about land and resources.
Yeah, that's the majoritarian fear that they play with.
But the point is that outside of Assam, perhaps, or in terms of narrative, nobody's asking him for accountability. Forget identity,
Exactly,
even
accountability.
material land grabs.
No, in Assam, see, that's what, that whose whole 10% unpopularity that has happened of Himanta is because of these allegations of corruption within his own
Corporate
family,
consolidation of land.
nepotism, all of that. Upper Assam, where I come from, where the largest number of assembly seats are there, people are endlessly talking about corruption of his government. They're talking about nepotism, his family's wealth going up by huge numbers, all of this. So he doesn't want
And the High Court
that
has
number.
now noted it,
Yeah,
like
so
you
that,
said.
That he doesn't want that discussion to come before the elections. And look what Gaurav Gogoi is doing. He's all the time pointing fingers at that. So how is it he going to fight an election when all fingers are being pointed at him for that? So he has to go back to the original sin, which is the original fear, the raw sentiment. That is what he's trying to do.
So before we move on, I want to ask one final question to you on this, is the fact that as Sangeeta was just mentioning, that one can ignore all the other pressing issues of our times if you continuously just keep on talking about how the majority has been wronged and the reason is an unknown, unidentified group of people who are allegedly taking away all your resources.
In fact, he started to call them the unknown people. First, he used to say Bangladeshi, now it's just the unknown. But as on land, and the High Court is now noticing it, even on identity, even on jati, my Assamese friends used to laugh and say that we are not communal. We hate all outsiders equally. We don't
Yes,
care whether they're
yes.
Muslim or whether they're Bengali, we don't like them.
The biggest anti-CAA protest, which was anti-CAB, was against everyone.
So even his conception of identity, which is basically the Muslim, is not really palatable to the Assamese,
to the large swath of
because
Assamese.
that's not how Assamese identity was constructed. It was not Hindu and Muslim. It was Assamese and the outsider. But I know we are delayed, but I also want to say one last thing, and that was your original question to me. This striking off the voters list. Now imagine the Madrasi camp that's been demolished in the heart of Delhi. The first thing if the state did was to start filling up Form 7 saying that now they are not ordinarily resident in this slum, so strike them off. It's akin to that. That is not your first responsibility. Your first responsibility is to rehabilitate them. And you're agreeing that you have to. That's one of your duties. And as of now, there's no updation happening. When the updation happens, and hopefully if by that time you'd have relocated them somewhere, then naturally they'll be updated. They'll figure in some other list where they are ordinarily resident. But as of now, they're still ordinary residents of where they've been evicted from because they have nowhere else to go. Right? So this urgency, that's the first response. That shouldn't be. As first responders, you give them housing, you give them medical help. The first thing you're doing is striking them off. That's ridiculous. And it's completely illegal. Also, they're filling up Form 7, which calls for deletions. They're not filling up Form 8, which is to do with corrections. They're not filling up Form 8A, which is to do with transfer from one constituency to another. Why are you filling up deletions? So it's basically just narrative, because legally it has no legs to stand on.
So we'll have to keep our eyes on all these developments in the coming months as they are evolving every day. But I also want to speak about the fact that the Delhi High Court earlier this week set aside a 2016 order of the Central Information Commission directing the Delhi University to disclose information regarding Prime Minister Modi's bachelor degree, observing that it was personal information. But interestingly, what has come out of this order is that there is a mention of the data protection law, which has not yet been notified. Yet that finds mention in the order to say that there is legislative intent and therefore it's personal information. And just to tell our viewers that the Data Protection Law amends the Right to Information Act, Section 81J, to blanketly exempt all personal information, and the court in this case said that there was no larger public interest in disclosing Prime Minister Modi's degree to the world. And if the court wanted, then they would show the degree to the court, but not to the people at large. But we know that university degrees are available anywhere and everywhere. One would earlier see their marks on the notice boards, etc. But before, I don't want to get into whether it's a larger public interest or not, but I want to address the question of transparency. The fact that the court can cite a law that has not even been notified and call it legislative intent, please explain what that means. I mean, what is the repercussion of that?
First of all, I want to say that given the kind of marks I had at school and college, I think in principle I agree that this is it could have been an utter invasion of privacy. That's how it's being described. But jokes aside, I don't think that that's the most problematic thing about that judgment, because judgments often rely on legislative intent as persuasive. So judges often look, and lawyers, when they're arguing, often rely on the statements and statement of objects and purposes. which is not part of the statute, but it conveys legislative intent. We rely often on the constitutional debates as being of persuasive value. So the court has said that this only conveys legislative intent, and it has noted that it's not been notified. But I think it's used it as a persuasive kind of argument. But to my mind, there are, obvious problems with that. To say that somebody who holds the highest public office and who's made a statement publicly, which was one of the preliminary criteria for his eligibility to contest elections. Not that he must have a degree, but that he's speaking the truth, that he's not committing perjury. Then that becomes evidence, actually, right? Then is the existence or non-existence of his degree could become evidence in this case, even if you call it a public trial, of whether he's actually been speaking the truth to the public or not. So I think the application of principles of privacy to this case are completely misguided. And I also want to talk about how the law is now creating a hierarchy between citizens. The Prime Minister is also a citizen. He's also equal before the law as any other citizen of India. But to expect other citizens to furnish all kinds of details about their families, about their spendings, about what we're watching on social media, etc., on the one hand, and exempting others does not speak well to equality before the law. Even in the latest SIR exercise, out of those 11 documents, one of the documents is your matriculation certificate. That's a degree. So you're expected to bring a degree to show that you're actually a legitimate voter or a legitimate citizen. On the other hand, you're saying this is such a question of privacy that the words are utter invasion of privacy. Then what are those documents doing on that list of 11 for the SIR, right? I mean, there has to be some kind of consistency. There has to be some kind of consistency of thought, consistency of policy, I'd say. And one last point, that one of the arguments made was by the state was that it's just impractical. How can you go to a university? How can you go to somebody and demand your certificates? Where will they find it? But the CIC, the university had not said that we can't find it. That was just one of the arguments that the state was making. And it was endorsed by the court. Whereas the practicality of finding a document is never a consideration in law. If that were a consideration, then why would you demand these documents, 11 documents, in the most document deficit state in the country, that is Bihar? Why would you expect people to find these documents in order to prove their very existence? So again, there's no consistency of thought.
This is very interesting that you've pointed out that the PM's degree is personal information and cannot be disclosed at a time when millions of people in our country are being asked to furnish documents to prove
their caste certificates, their matriculation certificates, all kinds of their parents' birth certificates,
which people probably don't even have. But Sangeeta, I want to ask you that do you think the larger question of transparency that arises out of this, what is the secrecy around the Prime Minister's degree? No one has a problem if he doesn't have a degree. There's a lot of debate around why must you see his degree? What does it matter if he's educated or not educated? The question is not whether he's educated or he's not educated. The question is that why is there a blockade of information in the highest office of this country?
The question is that he's made a statement to the effect that I have these degrees.
Yes, and they showed it also in 2016 at a press conference. The BJP, I remember it was Amit Shah and Arun Jaitley. They showed his degree in the press conference, and now it has become a state secret of sorts.
Because he said it on affidavit, right? He said it, and so therefore it will be perjury if it's proven to be wrong.
This is exactly the reason. Because see, if you were making a declaration, to the Election Commission of India, to the constitutional body, and you said, this is what I have, and then you have to sign and say what I have said is correct, is true. So that means you are actually, if you have said a lie and become India's Prime Minister for 10 years and more, you are actually, this is perjury, as she said. So this is the legal part. At some point, Sravasti, whether it has not come out now, but at some point it will come out. And we will get to know what is the real truth behind it, whether he actually had a degree or he didn't want to, it is his arrogance or his stubbornness that he didn't want to show that, or he was breaking law to become the Prime Minister of world's largest democracy. That is something we will get to know. It'll only time is like thing, and it'll come out at some point. Okay, at some point in history, this will come out, because this has never happened earlier, and there is no need to become a graduate to become Indian Prime Minister, isn't it?
Not at
Yeah,
all.
there's
Yeah,
not at all.
not
So
at all.
you should just say the truth. But then you have these. There have been, after this court judgment, there's all things that are circulating. One, of course, is Amit Shah's whole showing it that there is a degree, and then his own interview, Modi's own interview, saying that he was only 10th pass, and then he somehow went and did some kind of Delhi University, never attended one class. Then he claims also in that interview that he topped the class. So where are his classmates? This is one person I have seen who has no classmates in Delhi University. Nobody is saying that I had seen that fellow, we sat next to each other, I taught him. These things are not there. So this is quite a, and for a non-biological Prime Minister, this suits. But we are all biological, so we are having problems with that. So I am, being a biological journalist, I'm actually thinking, and a history buff, I'm thinking history will catch up with this non-biological Prime Minister at some point, Sravasti, rest assured.
Yesterday, we saw that a BJP MP, Nishikant Dubey, furnished a ITR copy of a journalist. We don't know who that journalist is, but it is all right today to put up an ITR document of a citizen of this country, but on social media, which is supposed to be private, right? It's not supposed to be furnished in public, right, like this. But before we wrap up,
Can I just say one thing? I want to say that it's not interesting to me personally whether he has a degree or not. I mean, I couldn't care less. But what is interesting and what is full of concern is, again, the process and where we're going with that. Now, politicians in India, unfortunately, don't speak the truth at all, ever. And that's not considered a problem anymore when they're constructing a narrative, when they're addressing their constituencies, when they're speaking to the public at large. They say whatever, and it's a jumla after all. So already we've come to a stage where it doesn't matter if you're speaking the truth or not to your own people, right? You can just say that, that was a jumla. But I think it should still matter to us whether you're speaking the truth in an affidavit or before a court of law. Because if we do away with that also, that would be a very low threshold.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my worry, Sravasti, is that we are dealing with a legal system here, a judiciary, Indian judiciary, which is actually looking at one person to be completely above law in a way. So this is something that is actually making me more and more worried. It is not about a politician lying to all of us, if at all he is doing. Okay, or I'm, as she said, I'm not bothered. I'm like, what has educated people done anyway? I mean, like, or if the uneducated person may do something. These are all, your caliber and your all these, your abilities are not so much concentrated on one degree, but it is the courts that are actually protecting him, is something that is making me a little worried.
And a final question to you is that the concern that has arisen, apart from all these aspects that we have discussed, is the fact that the RTI is going to be further weakened through this judgment. The RTI is already facing threats through the data protection law, but with the court now invoking it in this judgment, is there a very real fear that the right to information is in real jeopardy?
I think it is. I think it is. The court names it, but even otherwise, we see that distance now between some citizens and others, and how you can dox some citizens without any repercussions, whereas all information about certain others is beyond reach.
All right, so we'll have to keep it at that. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us on this edition of the Wire app, and to our viewers for watching.